Well, welcome everybody for joining us here on Walking in Spirit and Truth. And I just told Sandy that she needed to get a new producer.
I have nothing to say.
So anyway, hey, we've got a great show for you today. We've got some great things. We're going to continue the dig as we go into the depths of Isaiah chapter 6 and more of the things that we've been talking about. So I'm really looking forward to it. And Sandy, are you looking forward to it?
I am. We're going to really be focusing on the phrase that we ended with last week, where are you? Because we have been talking about Isaiah 6:8 specifically, where it says, here I am, send me. But as we talked about last week, we need to know whose voice we're listening to, whose voice is it, and he needs to know where we are. Where are we? Where are you? Where are you? So how can you be sent if you can't answer those questions? Well, we're going to talk about it tonight.
So is it a geolocation type of thing?
We're not doing that yet.
Oh, okay. All right. So we need to go over to Isaiah chapter 6. Let's jump into this.
Okay, let's jump.
All right. So Isaiah chapter 6, we're going to pick up where we've been reading, beginning with verse 1. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw Yahweh sitting on a throne, lofty and exalted, with the train of his robe filling the temple. Seraphim stood above him, each having 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, 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 Kadosh, 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 is Yahweh of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the thresholds trembled at the voice of him who called out with the temple, while the temple was filling with smoke. Then I said, Woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, Yahweh of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongs. And he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven. Then I heard, verse 8, the voice of Yahweh saying, Whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Then I said, Here I am, send me. All right. I'm reading this, and I just went back and re-listened to a presentation about Ron Wyatt and his...
Which one?
The one about the discovery of the Ark of the Covenant there in Jerusalem. And he was going back talking about how there are some people that went down into the chamber where the Ark of the Covenant has been held. And what happened is that those people that went down there, they all died. And
I thought they were going to keep it private so nobody could go.
Well, it is private, but these men who went down there, they did die, and they and the Israeli government went and had Ron Wyatt go down there to have them pulled out, because they knew that Ron had been down there already and that he did not die. So he was the one that had to go and get the bodies and put the ropes around them so they could pull the bodies out of there. But the amazing thing was, again, recalling about what he saw the last time he was down there. There were these angelic hosts that were there that spoke to him and saying that at the right time that the Ark of the Covenant will be released to come out into the public again, but the time was not yet. And so that was back in the 90s when that final time that Ron had gone down into that area. But it was so amazing, and how, again, he recalled listening how he found the blood on the Ark of the Covenant, and it was on the opposite side where the earth had split and the blood of Yeshua had drained down and dripped down on top of the Ark of the Covenant, and how it got there, because the Ark was preserved in this like sarcophagus type of box, and how that had opened up and allowed the blood to fall on there. And when they took a sampling of that blood and took it over to the laboratory there in Israel, they found out that it only had 23 chromosomes.
And it was still alive.
And it was still alive. They added some saline solution to it, and it was still alive.
Right.
And they asked, "Where did you get this blood?" And he told them. They said, "This is this." They said this is definitely human blood, but then they checked the chromosome count. It only had 23, which
only from Mary.
Only from Mary. So awesome! Just an awesome testimony and story that in this discovery that Ron Wyatt had made. And
if you've never gotten the opportunity to listen to that testimony, go and find that. Ron Wyatt discovering the ark is just pretty amazing.
So when I read this encounter here with Isaiah and the seraphim and what, where is he, and what he's in the temple. I mean, he's in the most holy place, and here these seraphim are right there. I mean, oh my goodness,
So what brought you to thinking about Isaiah 6 and the account of Ron Wyatt?
Well, I was just thinking about those angelic hosts that stood guard in that room. That was their sole purpose, is to stand guard, to make sure it's protected and not discovered and not brought out before the proper time. So here we have these seraphim, and what you got to think about the majesty, and you have to think about the holy place that it is, that place of just not anybody can even go in there and live, and unless they are on the mission. They've been commissioned. They've been called to be there in that place and then sent forth.
When you are called, you are protected.
Mm-hmm. So that brings us around to what we were talking about, which is, why are you where you are at? Where are you? And so this is where Isaiah gets his commissioning, and that he is found there in the presence of Yah, and he's commissioned. And it's not like God didn't know where he was, but he was called.
So with that being said, let's jump back to Bereshit, to Genesis 3. We're going to look at verses 9 and 10. We're going to look at a few Hebrew words here, as well as their roots, and see if we can reveal something. I have a question for you. Do you want to know what God's heart is?
Yes.
Even if it doesn't make sense to the world, even if it makes you look foolish, would you like to know what God's heart is on everything?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So now that we've answered that question, let's read Genesis 3, 9 through 10.
Then Yahweh Elohim called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "I heard the sound of thee in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself."
Naked, so I hid myself. Well, let's first start off with the word naked. We're only going to look at this briefly for a moment. And the word naked in Hebrew is aram, from two possible roots. Aram, which means naked, okay, act wisely, prudently, cautiously. But it could also be from ayar, which is another root, which means to be in grief. Agony is in the agony of death, or grief over a death. Now, when you're looking at God's heart, sometimes that means our tradition and the way we've looked at scripture in the past. There might be something deeper. There might be something completely opposite, or of what we thought something was, or maybe something is incorrect. I don't know. We have to look at that when we're studying out scripture and be ready to change our paradigm, to shift or add to, or search things out. And that's what we're supposed to do as priests and kings. We are supposed to search things out. So if we're looking for God's heart, be ready to find some answers if you're willing to go deep. And sometimes going deep causes trouble in our hearts, because we're like, I didn't think of it that way. I didn't believe that way. I'm not sure. Well, what about everything I've thought about for X many years that I've been alive? Well, let's find out. Because if you have this idea that y'all's wandering around saying, "Adam, where are you? Mr. and Mrs. Adam, where are you? I don't know where you are. Can you let me know?" Is that going to give you much confidence in a God that doesn't know where we're at? Well, no. And I don't know that any of us truly believe that's what was going on.
Wait. They weren't playing hide and seek?
Not playing hide and seek.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not like Amarillo that likes to say, let's play hide and seek.
She actually did that today. But
She
that's a side
did.
trail.
Okay.
Sidetrack.
So,
okay.
so they're not playing hide and seek with the father.
No. But let's go
Okay.
back to that phrase in verse 9 where it says, where are you? We're going to bring it back to naked. And we're going to bring those two definitions back in a moment. But where are you? Ayaka. So what does that mean? There's this rendering of Ayaka that would make more sense if you're looking at it from the aspect of what is God's heart. If we look at it deeper than what we just think, where are you at? Okay, your location is XXX. Because translators don't usually use this other rendering of where are you, because they're first off, they're not English words that would even match up to this translation. Not translation. When you break it down into the Hebrew, you can't find English words to match it. And so what do? Well, I'll say it means something else then, since I can't describe it in this language. Well, the second reason is that it seems to fit in our logical minds, I guess, human minds. Well, A plus B or 1 + 1 = 2. And so it seems to fit that way. So we're going to go ahead and use that definition, because the other one is so abstract. And the other one, how do we even find the words to say it? So let's just use the one that's easy to go with.
Is that kind of like saying, like in the book of Revelation, chapter 4, when it's talking about the green horse?
Chloros.
Yeah, it's actually the chloros horse, but they don't know of a green horse, so they change the
Dappled,
color.
and it's actually green, and there's a whole bunch of stuff we could go into that, but that's not the lesson for tonight.
Just an example, though.
Okay, but now you've got me going that direction on the 4 horses, and then I actually want to go there, but I'm not. You got to stay focused. So we're talking about where are you right now. So let's look at this idea that seems more abstract, that we can't find the words for, because if you look at it from that aspect, the where are you, it means you can sort of translate in English. Remember, this is inadequate. Whoa, it's me. Whoa, whoa. Now, I can't imagine y'all saying that. And English is inadequate, so that's not exactly what would be translated if it was translated correctly, because we don't have the words. But in the Bible renders this word in lamentation, which is Megillat Echa, and this word Elecha with an E, Elecha, where the other one is Eliacha, which is A. So when you look at it with this E, it has the same consonants, just different vowels. And the root word is the same and means a lamentation, a cry of grief, a cry of mourning. Where are you? A cry of mourning? That doesn't make sense, does it? Well, let's keep talking, because I don't know that I could ever picture God, Yahweh, walking around the garden saying, "Whoa, woe is me." I don't think those would necessarily be the words he used to express himself, although maybe some form of that absolutely could be, yeah. But if we are created in Yah's image, which we are, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have grief?
Yes.
Do we experience heartbreak?
Yes.
When we have broken relationships, does it hurt and does it ache within us?
Yes.
When relationships are broken within us, is there a mourning that goes on? And sometimes it takes a lot of time to heal from that. And sometimes we don't ever heal from that break in relationship. It is a cry in our hearts. It's an ache in our hearts. It is something that your life can seem unrepairable at times when relationship is broken. True or false?
That is true. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're human, you're going to go through that, and there's people that actually they will separate themselves from being with people because of heartache, but we're not supposed to do that. Hasatan will do things to create divisions and separate people, because what's he want? Because he wants to create division. He wants people to be alone. He wants people not to be engaged with one another. And of all different things, when you love much, you're risking a lot. But don't you think Yeshua loved much, and he risked his whole life?
Okay, so if we're created in his image, and I know you can answer this for me, how many times have you seen me weeping over broken relationships?
Oh, a lot. And you'll chew on it for
a long time.
Not just hours, and not just days, but it'll be a long time.
Yeah.
It can be months.
Broken relationships
and
dig into me deeply, and I will cry over them, and I will weep over them.
it'll be
And
years.
It's deep. It's very deep for
There's
me.
times you bring up things that have gone on for years because you're grieving over that relationship.
Right. So, and you've
But
grieved
we all
too,
do.
right?
We all do.
It's just mine's very visible to my husband. Others might not see it, but my husband and maybe those close to me might know. But if we are created in Yah's image, and we can respond to that, to broken relationship, could Yahweh respond in that way to a broken relationship?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because
I just think I don't know how he can carry it, because it's not just when I can think about my relationship with him and I'm just one person. Think about billions of people, and how he
heartbroken every day.
I would just think, man, I mean, you can think about it when he and Moses were having these discussions on the mountain, this golden calf was being formed, and Yah is right there ready to just slay them all and start all over with Moses. I mean, talk about a hurt and grieving heart, because he just married them, and they've already, in just a few short weeks, that they're already going back.
It would almost be like, I think his heart is always breaking, though, because he loves each and every one of us. And if we are created in his image, and therefore he deals with those same things, then man, imagine how hurt he is all the time because of rejection, because we reject him. But most people, most that would call themselves believers, might not want to picture a Yah that weeps over his children. But what does it say about if one goes astray? You have 99 and one goes astray. What does he do?
He'll leave them all and go for the one.
He leaves the 99 and goes for the one, because he does not want broken relationships. He wants to have his people protected and taken care of. So here we go to this interpretation of where are you, this translation, Alicha, which is that interrogative, which basically means where are you, where are you at, what's your location. But if we would go to Yah's heart and say this is an expression of grief, and use the other vowel points with the E, the Eliaka, then it's talking about this grief, this expression of grief. So what's causing Yahweh to grieve? Well, think of Mr. and Mrs. Adam. They were hiding because they had sinned. Immediately, he knew of that broken relationship. Immediately, they knew of that broken relationship. And there was grief. Can you imagine? He was heartbroken. Did it surprise him? No. But think about him, about Yeshua at the garden. He knew it was coming, but he wept and he grieved and even fretted over the moments that were going to happen, even though that he knew they were going to happen. So here we have this Yah that's grieving over this broken relationship. See, Mr. and Mrs. Adam weren't hiding from Yahweh. They were hiding from his presence. They were hiding from his presence, because they were ashamed. They were heartbroken. They were guilty. And so they hid themselves away from the presence of God because they were so ashamed. It wasn't their sin separating them. It was their guilt. It was them. God didn't remove himself from them. They removed themselves from him. So why did they hide from his presence? Well, I can tell you, one of the things Amarillo wants to do when she's done something wrong is she'll go and just sort of have a big pouty lip and go off and sort of tuck her head and stuff like that. And, she needs to, it's okay that she feels heartbroken that she messed up. That's okay. Mm-hmm. It's better that than, oh, I don't care, it's not my fault. That's the syndrome that most of the people in the world suffer from right now.
Yes.
But when you look at Adam, and that when they hit Mr. and Mrs. Adam, they hid from the presence of God. But what did they say? We're naked. Okay, why did they say they were naked? They're dealing with Yahweh who created them. They've been naked all the whole time. So is it anything new? and traditionally we explain it, the glory was congealed inside and became the blood that's within us. There's all sorts of things, and I'm not saying that's wrong. But let's look at naked. If being literally without clothes on isn't necessarily completely the idea here, or maybe it's just one layer of the idea here, because there shouldn't be shame when they've seen it, when he's been with them before in that state. It could be a ram, which means naked, of course, but it could also mean to act prudently, wisely, or cautiously. But this word could also go with a different vowel point, yar, and that would mean to be in agony, like is in the agony of death. Okay, this is painting a new picture here. So if really wanting to understand Yah's heart, and we see him as heartbroken because of the broken relationship, because something has shifted, because things have changed, and pushing aside the traditional rendering that translators have given us, then if they're hiding because they're quote unquote naked, let's look at this alternative rendering as possible to draw from, because it would be this cry. It would be as if a cry of a lover who's separated from his beloved. And what's the beloved doing? The beloved is actually hiding from her lover's presence because she's in agony, because she has betrayed him, because she has broken his heart, and she knew it. She knew it happened. She felt it, and she wishes now she could go back and change it. And so what's she doing? She separated herself and hiding from his presence because she's so ashamed, and she's in agony, even as to the agony of death. Now you picture this scenario when he is saying, where are you? And I hid because I'm naked, instead of our tradition, where's your location? What are you doing? Et cetera, et cetera. And we picture these heart things that are going on between the beloved, between the bride and the bridegroom, between Yahweh and his Mr. and Mrs. Adam. We see that when you look at it from this perspective, this alternative rendering shows a Yahweh who is grief-stricken, not angry over the sins, not, oh, I'm going to get you, I'm going to beat you over the head. That's not what it's about, because there's a broken relationship, and he's heartbroken, he's grief-stricken because sin has caused you to hide. Sin has caused Mr. and Mrs. Adam to hide from the presence, and that he longs to share. Doesn't that change the way you look at that scripture? Now let's look at Matthew 11, verses 28 through 29.
Okay, I don't want to jump ahead.
Well, then don't. Let's finish this thought.
Because I don't want to lose that thought.
Can you write it somewhere so you won't lose it?
I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to have to. Okay, so let's look at Matthew. By the way, while I'm looking up Matthew, what was the verse again? Matthew 11, 28 through 29. Matthew 11, 28 through 29. And that I said Revelation 4 earlier. It's actually Revelation 6 talking about the horse. Just want to correct that for the record, so y'all think I'm not biblically illiterate. Got a lot to learn, but still. All right. Some people will get very critical about that. Matthew 11, 28 through 29. Let's stay on course here, because I don't want to forget the emotion that's tied up here. I don't want to break that idea up when we go to this next part. I want us to stay there. So Matthew 11, 28 and 29 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you shall find rest for your souls." So what is that telling us here? He's not the taskmaster ready to whip us into submission. That's not him. You will bend to my will or else, but he's the lover, and he's receiving us with open arms, ready to hug, ready to forgive. He doesn't want to force you into submission. That's not who he is. But he is a Yah of emotion. He loves us more than we could ever imagine. And here in Genesis, when we read these scriptures, chapter 3, 9 through 10, we see this response. Where are you? My heart's broken. Look what's happened here. I'm crying. I'm lamenting. And the bride, Mr. and Mrs. Adam, hiding themselves because they had broken his heart. They had betrayed him. Naked. Yes, they were naked.
But that's not really where it's at right now. It's really, they were hiding themselves when you look at this translation because of what their act was. So they had separated themselves from Yah because they were so ashamed, and they were in agony even unto death because of what they had done. So you have the both lovers, the beloveds, they both of them are heartbroken. One because he's lost contact, to the other because they betrayed and they hurt. So there's another way to look at this naked. If you look at it and you break it down, it's from ayin. What is an ayin? An ayin is represented by the eye, and you have eyes, but you can no longer see, possibly. The yod, which you're stuck in place, you're no longer becoming. The resh, which is the head, but you are so self-absorbed that you're no longer radiating light. And the mem, which can almost like there's shadows are around you, you're no longer protected. And you think about this, let's see this decline. This glorious Mr. and Mrs. Adam created in his image, covered in Yah's glory, that had intimate contact with him daily, but now they no longer see, they're no longer becoming, they're no longer radiating the light they once did, and they don't even feel protected because they had lost what they once had, and they were ashamed, they were heartbroken. You know, if you even look at them in this state, they tried to cover themselves with leaves. Well, the minute you break those leaves off, they're dead, they're dying, and they will wither quickly. Isn't that what we do? Is we try to cover ourselves with things that are inadequate, and they're dead, they're dying, and it's never enough. If you take those leaves, you're going to have to get more leaves, because those leaves would be scrumpled up, dry and brown, and not do the job soon. Now, of course, that Yah took care of that too. But I'm just saying, we're always looking for things to take care of us, but they're never enough. That's futile. Even the blood of bulls and goats, it was constant sacrifice, but it was never enough. It didn't take care of intentional sin. It didn't fulfill all that Yeshua did when he went to the cross, when he went to the stake. You know, that's why when Yeshua looked at the fig tree, he cursed it, because all he found was works. He found leaves, but he didn't find any fruit. When he came into in the flesh, what did he find? He found sacrifice, but he didn't find fruit. There's no fruit. And that's what he's looking for in our lives, fruit. That's what he wanted in Mr. and Mrs. Adam life. And they broke it. They broke it with the fruit. And
they covered, what a connection you just made there. What are they wearing? They're wearing fig leaves. What did Yeshua do when he saw the tree? He saw a tree with fig leaves, no fruit. Mm-hmm. So it takes us back to the garden, saying, here is, think about the man that was blind, and he could see. He said, Yeshua, he prayed for him, and he said, what do you see? I see men walking around as trees. And so we have the analogy that here Adam and Chava are trees with fig leaves with no fruit. And the very response where Adam is saying, that I heard you I heard the sound of thee in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And the really what he's saying is, because it's not where are you, but why are you where you are at, and you're going to go into that. But on the other hand, he says, I heard you because you see me how I really am. And we get that picture that he's like, I'm exposed.
My betrayal is exposed, and it's ugly.
My heart, my real condition is exposed before you, because you really see me as I really am. Where my heart is, where my condition is, what my condition is, or how my condition is. And that word that you brought up earlier that defines, where we say the interpretation, where are you, uses all of those questions, the how, the where, the why. It's all related to that same word, just depending on how it's used.
Right. And we're about to go into another way to look at this word. And I think what we just explored is very significant. And I do think it is speaking of that relationship and how they felt, and that relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Adam and Yeshua himself as he was walking in the garden. But I want us to go further and look at another layer of this word, where are you? Because this is really the question that we need to discover of ourselves, so that when we say, here I am, send me, Hanini, that we've got to know our location. We've got to know our location, and Lord, we have to know our heart. We have to know all of these things as well. We've got to be able to answer and understand this question. So let's go ahead and look at Genesis 16:8. Genesis 16:8. Welcome, Sheila. It's good to have you here,
And Joe's
as well as Johanna. It's always good to see you both.
Genesis. I'm getting there. I'm in Genesis. I just trying to hold my place in a couple places here. Genesis 16. What was the verse? 16:8. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from and where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai.
Okay. So here we have Hagar. And we understand that she is like this bondservant. She is fleeing into the wilderness because of the abuse that Sarai was putting forth on her, because of everything. So we have this question again: where are you? Basically, where are you going? Where have you come from? Where? And here we have the angel of Yah, and of course, when we encounter the angel of Yah, what do we see the angel of Yah in Scripture? Is Yeshua. So here we have this angel of the Lord makes the first appearance here in Scripture, and it's to a woman, and it's to a person that's not actually even a Hebrew. So that's not actually part of Israel yet. So it's a strange, quote unquote, stranger, if you want to say that. But that's the first conversation between the angel of the Lord and a woman. But you could even say that this woman has more faith than many other believers, most other believers, because what does she do? Despite the hardship, she's in the desert, she's facing death. Despite everything that's going on around her, she obeys. Despite of the cruelty that she's going to have to possibly face, she still obeys. She trusts Yah in everything, and in everything. Yet she wants to flee. Everything in her flesh wants to flee. When hard things come, there's been times I want to flee too. It doesn't get to happen, but when hard times are on the way, or you're experiencing horrible hardship, sometimes there's just this flee aspect that gets within us, and so it's natural. And that's what Hagar did. She was fleeing, but yet, even though she wanted to run away, she has more faith in the angel, in this word, than she does in anything else. And so she listens. So let's look at the question: where are you going? Where are you going? What word do you suppose the angel of the Lord uses? Is he asking one more time, location, location, location? Absolutely not. But let's look at it anyway, just to make sure, because we're going to review these same words again. Aye and echo. Where, echo. Okay? It means how and where, in what manner. So when you look at a he, this ahi is the shortened term for I, and you see it in, then Yahweh Elohim called to the man and said to him, where are you? What we just spoke of. So it's really this statement of, why are you here where I expected you to be? Why aren't you where you're supposed to be right now? I think I've asked that question before of people. Why aren't you where you're supposed to be right now? But you need to know the difference in the translation, or you're going to miss some of these things, because this whole thing is not, one more time, just like it was in Genesis 3:9, it's not about the location, not at all. He's not asking what location, where are you, why aren't you here? Well, that's not what it's about. It's this surprise. What are you doing here in the desert when you should be back home? What are you doing right here where you're running from right now when you should be where Yah has told you to be? Why are you running? Why aren't you where you're supposed to be? I think that's a question, a reflective question that oftentimes we need to say to ourselves, because how often Yah has us do something and we run from it, or he wants us to do something, or it just gets too tough, it gets too hard, and so we quit and we run, or we go find another project to get our minds off of whatever that we're having, the hard stuff that we need to be dealing with. Where are you? Why aren't you where you're supposed to be? Man, that question I think could be asked of all of us at least one point in time in our lives. What are you doing here in the desert when you should be back with Sarai? What are you doing right here at this moment, John, Sandy, or whomever, put your name in there, when you should be at this place right here? This is where you're supposed to be. And yet you're running from that calling. You're running from that duty. You're running from that place because it's hard. He uses this word, he, and what does it tell us? What are you doing here? Why are you running away from the pain? Why? Because Hagar only knows that she's running, that the surprise is expressed by the angel of Yah is about the foolishness of trying to escape the pain when you need to deal with it. The foolishness of trying to run from those emotions when you need to deal with it. You need to sit in it. You need to walk it out with Yahweh. You need to deal with it, because you can't solve a problem unless you deal with it. You can't run. You can't become triumphant even in a season of mourning unless you walk through the valley, because if you run, sometimes you're stuck in that valley and that season keeps going and going and going. But that is why Yahweh even commands us to have a season of grieving at times. When somebody passes away, that was the problem with Moshe. When Miriam died, the people of Israel mourned Aaron, and they mourned Moshe, but they never mourned Miriam. And if you've heard me preach on that before, we see Moshe responding out of anger and hitting the rock from that failure to mourn, walking through the season, getting on with business as usual when you fail to deal with the pain that's in front of you. Because guess what's going to happen? If you deal with it and you are seeking Yahweh, he's going to be in the midst of that pain, in the midst of the hurt, in the midst of those difficulties, in the midst of that emotional turmoil, because you trust him. So you don't try to escape whatever you're dealing with. You trust God to take care of that thing with you and for you and through you and around you, to shield you in, to hold you, to walk you through when you can't walk it out, to be your rear guard, to be the one as your shield and buckler, to go out before you and make a way where there seems to be no way. So whether it's pain or whether it's heartache or hardship, whatever we're trying to escape from, the bottom line is, why are we where we're at? Why aren't we where we're supposed to be? Because Yah wants us to deal with that thing right in there and trust him to deal with it for us, in us, and through us. It's not escape. You can't escape it. And in the end, the angel of the Lord reveals to Hagar that she must return because Yahweh is doing something in the situation that she cannot see. She can't see it, but Yah knows what it is. He is doing something in your situation that you cannot see. You may not even understand. You may not even fathom it right now, but Yahweh is doing something. So don't run. Why aren't you where you're supposed to be? Where are you? Did I call you? Do you trust me? Do you truly trust me to take care of you in the midst of this pain? Do you truly trust me to take care of this physical thing? Do you truly trust me to take care of you in every way? Because I'm doing something that you can't see and you can't fathom. I'm doing a new thing. And in this season, this desert season, we know that when you're in the desert, it brings promotion. Promotion's coming, a new change of garment. Something is happening and shifting, if we will but trust him. Where are you? Why aren't you where you're supposed to be? Don't you understand? Don't run. But when we realize that it's not about us always. Sometimes we're walking through these things, trusting him because he has a testimony that he wants to have brought forth. He has a testimony that he wants other people to hear, and he wants you to be the example. What about the fact that we always need to remember that When Hagar was in the desert, when she was in the wilderness, did she have to seek him out, or did he go to her? The angel of Yah, Yeshua, went to her. He sought her out in the wilderness. He sought her out. So you thought you were alone? You think you're alone right now? You're not alone. In fact, this time is the special time between you and him. You're not alone, because the greatest encounters happen when it's just you and Yahweh, the greatest things. In fact, if you look back, maybe you can look at that moment. Oh, I get it now. Now, when you're walking through it, it just seems painful. It seems impossible. It seems to hurt. But in hindsight, later down the road, as you walk through that valley, you will see the triumph and how God knit this beautiful tapestry together. And that pain and that valley experience was part of it, because the mountaintop was coming. So the angel of Yah spoke to a woman. The angel of Yah spoke to somebody that wasn't even Hebrew. He speaks to you and he speaks to me. So how did Hagar respond? How do we respond when we're faced with those same situations? Where are you? Here I am, send me. Well, we need to know where we are first. He needs to know where we are. Or are we separating ourselves because of the shame of our own sin? Are we separating ourselves from others because of the shame of our own mistakes? Or do we get on our face, ask forgiveness, teshuva, turn away from it, stop running from the pain, stop running from the mess we made of our own lives, and run to him and go back where we're supposed to be, to pick up that sword, to put on the armor, and to fulfill the purposes for which he's called us. When we run, you're never going to stop running. You'll run from one thing to the next to the next. If you're constantly hiding from God, that's running. Mr. and Mrs. Adams separated themselves because of their shame, because they're heartbroken. Maybe you've broken Yah's heart in some way and you're running, or a friend or someone else. Guess what? There's forgiveness and there is restoration. And that's what he wants us to know. He can't use us. We can't say, here I am, send me, until we until we get ourselves right. So we put ourselves in a position where we can go, where we can do. And that can happen quickly. He can knit us back together quick, but we have to be willing vessels.
You know, I'm still pondering over that whole thing, you know, where are you type of thing. And I looked at a lexicon by Marcus Jastrow, who from a Hebrew perspective, that word, that how he defines it is, oh, how, oh. So think about that. When God spoke to Adam, he says, oh, how could be a question mark, or it could be an exclamation point. Oh, how? Oh, how? Oh. I mean, just the sheer thing. And then he follows up with some questions saying, okay, all right, what happened? Tell me what happened. And then he follows up with this, you know, he says, you know, these are the consequences, but then he covered them. And I believe it doesn't say it's a lamb, but he clothed them with lamb's clothes. I believe it from the very beginning. And he's like, oh, what did you do? Or how? Oh, how? Oh.
But remember, even in the midst of this, what God's heart is.
But he doesn't have to ask the question how, because he knows. So I think putting the exclamation point, oh, how?
But even in the midst of this, we need to realize that Yah is dealing with a broken heart himself.
Because he knows they're going to be, he's got to drive them out of the garden. They can't be by the tree of life.
To protect themselves.
And to protect them. And also, but he's not going to be able to walk with them daily in that garden.
Again, it's the brokenness and the agony of a lover, of lovers even. Mm-hmm. And it's the separation. There's so much emotion that this whole thing plays out with. And it's playing out today too. Because I think, I asked that same question of so many of us throughout our lives, not just one time. Those times when we're running, those times when we've really messed things up, and our life's a mess, those times when we just run because we don't know why things are happening as they are, the time when others hurt us, so we run. I mean, we can look at this, and this question could be asked of each and every one of us many times throughout our lives. And sometimes it's us running from the abuse of a situation or the hardship of a situation, and sometimes it's from our own mess, our own betrayal.
And yet the way that the Father spoke to them was not in condemnation.
No, he wasn't of a taskmaster.
It wasn't saying, "Oh, I'm so disappointed in you. Like I'm just going to verbally go after you," or anything. Like, he was just the great, as you said, the disappointment, the heartbrokenness, the hurt, knowing that this caused a separation. And I think it's the same manner by which Yahweh approached Moses, spoke to Moses, saying, I got to kill him. I got to kill them all. And Moses then, because of the heartbrokenness, and yet Moses is able to communicate and say, look, wait a minute. Let's step back for a moment. Wait a minute. Don't try to start it all over again. And as he interceded, but that's about the relationship that we're to have. Do you think Moses, when he saw the Father's response, of course, we see it as anger over there when that happens, when they're at the golden calf incident, but could it not be from that same emotional basis by which Adam, that he approached Adam there in the garden?
But it could have been based there, but it could still be that heartbrokenness of the broken relationship, but anger too, because they went the step further and were worshiping an idol. So and it could be both. It could actually be both.
And as the Father is discerning what happens, and he says, okay, who did this? Then he identifies the source, and which, of course, with the serpent. And then and that serpent, of course, gets the curse. That
and well, that's
a whole nother story there. But so therefore, look what happened. What happened with the golden calf? Grinds it down to the powder, and their bellies swell. Right. So anyway, there's a whole nother story, and it all connects.
Yeah. And I don't want to leave this because I want to stay at the gravity of this moment. And I want to encourage you right now that when you're dealing with something and it's pain that you're walking away, to sit there and dwell on the pain and those things that cause the pain. Don't do that, because that's not what the word says. If you're sitting there and it's even loss, I'm not saying don't remember. That's fine and good. But to dwell on it when it's ripping your heart out is not what the word says. What does the word say we should dwell upon? Whatever is good, whatever is lovely, whatever is praiseworthy. And we could go on with that. Because I remember when my mom, and to this day, but even from the very beginning, when she lost my father, I would say, aren't you heartbroken? And she says, I'm not going to sit there and think about that. Yes. And if I do, I'll start to cry and I'll start to be lost in my situation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So guess what? That's not what the word tells me to do. I will put that stuff out of my mind for now. Yes, I will grieve, but I will think upon the things that the Lord has told me. So something has happened and you've done something maybe, and you keep focusing on that thing and it keeps haunting you. Stop thinking about that thing and start thinking about Yah's word and what he says, because those things are going to keep you sort of circling the drain and staying in that place of separation. I'm not saying you don't deal, because remember, I told you deal with the pain, but you deal with it through Yah. And what does Yah's word say? How to deal with it. So take your thoughts captive, because this is where the battle happens. It'll keep you from running. It'll keep you from never escaping that emotion, and it'll keep you from getting stuck. When we sit there and dwell over those things that we've done, that we've messed up, that have hurt us, where our heart's been broken, if we sit there and think and contemplate and ruminate it, we're chewing on something that's ultimately can destroy us. And that's not what Yah says. He says, take your thoughts captive.
So take it all the way back to Isaiah now. He's in the presence. What is he? He's like, oh my goodness. he's like, why am I here where I am right now? And yet he sees himself as completely naked and sees himself extremely vulnerable. But it is from the fire of the altar that takes him and it seals his heart. And then his response then, so the question is, oh, how? Oh, my. Oh, it turns into, it shifts for Isaiah and it turns around. Okay, here I am, send me. So now we're going back to that whole thing. Where are you? Or where are you? Or what are you doing? What's going on here? Now he's recognizing him for where he's at. And we have a dog here. And now he's recognizing what needs to be done. And he's been touched from the fire of the altar. Now that which he was felt so naked before God now has been turned around to say, okay, now you got me. Now what? Now what? So, oh, how turns into now what? Where do we go from here? So,
right. So we want to pray before we get going. And I want to just, if you're dealing with stuff, Father, we come before you in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, and we thank you for this time and this lesson and learning and digging into your word and discovering how much you love us and how much you care for us, and you long for that relationship with us, that you long for us to trust you in all things, even in loss, even in brokenness, even in hurt, even in abuse, even in pain. And Father, let us be those that say we trust you enough to go back and deal with that thing. We trust you enough, Father, because we love you. Father, restore relationships, rebuild relationships, Father, mend hearts, take care of the situations people are dealing with. We leave it to you, Father, for you said that you will take care of us, and we trust you in that. We lay it at your feet and say, Father, you said you're the husband to the husbandless, the father to the fatherless. You said you are shield. You said you make a way where there seems to be no way. You said you turn around all things around for your glory. So, Father, in every situation that everyone is facing, we expect those things because that's who you are. So we rest in you and we trust in you as your bride, as those that want to be with the beloved. Oh, that is us. And we want to know your heart because we want you to know our heart. We're not going to run anymore. We're not going to dwell anymore and sit there in the midst of whatever it is, in a format of running or stopping growth or stunting ourselves. But Father, we're going to trust you in all things. We give it to you. We lay it at your feet, and we will praise you in all circumstances. We choose to praise you and extol and exalt your holy name, for you are King, you are Yah, and you are shield, you are our buckler, you are our deliverer, you are the lover of our soul. And that's all that matters. So we give it all to you. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Well, thank you for joining us this time around at Walking in Spirit and Truth. I hope you got something out of that. I hope you're encouraged and inspired by it. I think you did a great job, Sandy, and we look forward to being with you next time, y'all willing. So
this is Sandy.
And this is John.
Shalom.
Shalom.